Good Monday morning on May 8th. It's time for another week's worth of podcasts from a couple of guys who don't listen to me ever. I'm DDG, and in the house for the 359 podcast, we have Roger Cheng and Ben Fox Rubin, episode 223. What's up, guys?
We're sorry. We're sorry we don't listen to you. It's really just Ben who doesn't listen to you.
Hey, yeah, throw me under the bus.
That's right.
All right.
What are we talking about? We're talking about net neutrality. It's a hot topic. John Oliver talked about it last night on Last Week Tonight. And our own Maggie Reardon got an exclusive interview with FCC Chairman Ajit Pai. We'll break that down for you. And second up, we're going to talk about Andy Rubin's next project.
No relation.
No relation to Ben Fox Rubin.
Right.
Andy Rubin, better known as the founder of Android.
And he's got a new startup accelerator, which Rich Nieva got a chance to dive into last week.
And it's housed in an old Fry's Electronics warehouse, which I kind of love.
Makes sense.
I love that detail. So we're going to talk about that. As always, if you have any questions about these topics, leave it in the comment section. Brian will pick out the best, and we'll get to them in 3 minutes and 59 seconds.
Here we go. We'll see you in the chat in a couple minutes. And here we go in 3, 2...
Welcome to the 359. I'm Roger Cheng.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
What will net neutrality look like in the coming months? Well, we don't really know because FCC Chairman Ajit Pai has begun his assault on the existing rules. While he says he's all for an open internet, he doesn't agree with the regulations in place. Our own Maggie Reardon sat down with Pai, who says that he wants us to return to Clinton-era light touch regulations, but a lot of critics say that just gives internet service providers a lot more leeway and way too much power. Ben, what do you think?
I think that it makes sense that a Republican chairman would try to do something like this. It is interesting that he is, at least at the moment, trying to convey some sort of positive aspects about, like, I'm for the open internet.
Yep.
I'm not trying to, destroy your internet, people. But I don't think that he has a ton of credibility in the marketplace over this. So we'll see how people actually respond to this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, he is a former Verizon lawyer, which John Oliver, who actually devoted a segment yesterday on his show to talk about net neutrality, points out that it's kind of a dangerous connection there, right? And then the fact that all these guys, all the internet service providers like Verizon, Comcast, they also all say we're for an open internet. They just don't agree with the rules in place. Basically they don't want laws restricting them from doing the things that they say they are not going to do.
Right, and generally those are the types of folks that are going to win out the most if net neutrality does get thrown out. It's those ISPs, as opposed to Google, Amazon, Netflix.
Yep.
I mean, like, there's this enormous list of other giant companies that are also fighting to keep net neutrality rules in place. So who exactly is going to win out? The last time around, and we expected this would last a little bit longer than it did, but the last time around, the Netflixes of the world ended up winning out. This time, I mean, like, it's all under the FCC, right? Like, the FCC is going to make the decision.
Yeah, the issue here is, the reality is that this is a Republican-controlled FCC now. There's 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. So if they all vote in accordance with Pai, basically those rules are thrown out the window.
Okay, so ultimately, what do you think this means to consumers? Is this going to, like, raise my bills for certain things? Like, is my Netflix going to get more expensive, or am I going to have to pay more for my internet service?
The worst case scenario, I'm not entirely sure it'll affect your bill. What I think will happen, you'll have different varying services. Like the idea of net neutrality is that all internet traffic gets treated equally, right? Regardless, you can't pay for better access to a person. But theoretically, you could have Netflix paying to ensure that its stream does really, really well, whereas that next Netflix that's trying to come up, this Crackle or whatever, like, lesser known video service,
they're not going to be able to
They won't be able to pay
Right.
to have that higher stream quality or higher quality stream, which means you're going to stick with Netflix.
My argument with that, though, is that Netflix, if they end up having to cough up too much money, that's going to trickle down to the consumer.
Yeah,
I mean, like, that's speculative, but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Next, we also wanted to get to Playground Global. It's a new startup accelerator that's being backed by Andy Rubin. No relation, but this guy is, like, a really big deal in the tech world.
Well, yeah, he's the father of Android.
Yeah, father of Android.
Yeah.
He also ran Google's robotics division before he left.
He headed up their moonshots division basically for a little while.
So we'll see. I mean, like, we don't really know too much about Playground Global at this point. Our own Rich Nieva got a chance to go inside and check it out.
Yeah.
But we do expect some really impressive
I
things
think
out of it.
the most interesting thing is that, with a lot of these startups all focusing on software, this guy's really focusing on hardware, right? Sort of back to physical things, which is kind of nice. And really, the most exciting thing that we're hoping to see from him is a new phone. He teased a new phone from this startup or from this accelerator. So we'll see what, and obviously it runs on Android, but we'll see what it looks like. We'll see what it looks like. All right. For more of these stories, check us out on CNET. I'm Roger Cheng.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
Thanks for listening.
So let's talk about Ajit a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what was Maggie's impressions of him? Because he seems like a pretty, for lack of a better word, with it kind of guy. He's pretty down to earth.
He's a really nice guy. I mean,
but the tricky part is right now, no matter what his perspective is, he's the enemy.
Right. Well, for
power internet users,
for consumers, for consumer groups, for Democrats,
for a lot of major tech companies.
Yeah. If you're a Republican, if you're pro-business, if you're an internet service provider,
if you're anti-regulation,
he's your best friend. If
yeah.
you're exactly. So
this is really, I mean, like this is a major Republican platform. We're against too much government regulation. So his primary argument is that these net neutrality rules are based on utilities rules.
Let the market dictate itself.
Let the market dictate itself. Let the government get out of the way. And you have to at least respect the fact that this is a traditional government perspective, that this is what voters voted for when they voted in Donald Trump. Whether you're for or against it, this is what you would expect to happen.
This is the message. This is what trickles down. I mean, this is Donald Trump's platform, and he's the one who appointed Pai. And so, yeah, he's basically following the mandate, just like Tom Wheeler followed Obama's mandate when he instilled the actual net neutrality rules. Obama kind of made the push for it, so kind of forced Tom Wheeler's hand and really kind of got that going.
Right, and to be fair to the other argument that like everybody was like really celebrating the concepts of net neutrality. We won. Tom Wheeler is this hero. Right. Let's look at the other side of the coin. Is it possible that Ajit Pai could make reasonable arguments to say this could somehow help consumers?
Yeah, well, look, his argument is that with the net neutrality laws in place, there are too onerous that they basically choke off any kind of investment for these internet service providers. Your network's not going to get faster. It's not going to get better because these companies are gun shy about investing because of net neutrality laws that are in place.
My immediate impression on that is that Verizon is not hurting for money.
Right. That's the counter argument, and he's made arguments about sort of the level of investment falling since net neutrality has been put in place. People have kind of disputed those numbers. The thing of it is those numbers you could mess around to make any argument. Exactly, to make any argument. So I don't know, like it's highly debatable whether or not his argument holds water, but he's sticking to the fact that without these regulations, he thinks that they're going to invest a lot more in networks. Networks are going to get a lot better, a lot faster, and more effective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most endearing commentary I've heard on the entire process thus far.
Well, we should at least know what those arguments are.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. Maggie's story does a really great job elaborating on that. The conversation they had was seemingly uplifting, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, he stuck to his talking points. He wasn't very controversial. I think there was a line we actually cut out from the story at the end where we actually asked, this interview happened on Thursday, and Maggie actually asked, kind of a joking question, like, what if John Oliver called Tom Wheeler, the previous FCC chairman, a dingo, because he was actually a member of the Cable Lobbyists Association. Mm-hmm. And so she asked Ajit Pai, like, how he would react or what he would think John Oliver would call him. And he kind of punted that question, which is why we cut it. He didn't really give it any kind of answer. But it's kind of funny because then John Oliver goes on Sunday and actually makes it the centerpiece of his show.
Mm-hmm. I haven't watched that yet.
And actually, once again, this happened 3 years ago when he talked about net neutrality. He got people to go and email fcc.gov, crash the site. This time around, I think he did it again on Sunday. The site, it's back up now, but the site, I think, briefly crashed because of the response that came from John Oliver.
I think that there was at least a little bit of there was quite a bit of surprise that Wheeler was able to push through the net neutrality rules the first time around. I don't think that like they're probably going to get thrown out, right? Like what are the chances that this isn't going to happen now that the Republicans are actually in control?
No, you're almost assuredly going to have those rules thrown out. Title II regulations really wonky. Title II is this utility style set of laws that basically now protecting net neutrality. That will almost certainly get thrown out. Mm-hmm. What gets put in its place? is still up for debate. And really what the fears are is that it isn't just net neutrality or Title II that gets thrown out. Like any rules get thrown out. Like that Pai will just destroy all regulations and let these guys do whatever they want.
Right. Yeah. And for
And
somebody
the idea that they can govern themselves is really the principle that he's operating under, which, that's not always the case with these guys, right?
if you create another, I understand the primary argument for maintaining net neutrality is like, let's say like I cover Amazon. If like whatever Amazon's, like their competitor is going to be,
Right.
if they can't afford those faster pipes,
Yep.
they'll never actually, their pages won't even load. So
Could you
Amazon
imagine
can
if
afford
yeah,
that.
Amazon, like you get Amazon instantly, but jet.com like takes 5 minutes to load. Like
Right.
you'll never go to jet.com.
They'd be dead in the water before
Exactly.
they even got started.
Yep.
So yeah.
And as of right now, for some of us, having the option of what service provider you can actually get, depending on your local,
Mhm.
or depending on your area, is already pretty choked.
Yeah,
Do
you get like 1 or 2, right?
I've got
I mean,
one.
like
I don't
2
have
is
a choice.
impressive.
I have a telecom provider and I have a cable provider, right? So I've got either Verizon Fios or I've got Cablevision. So I've got 2. But you know what? It might as well be 1 because they'll kind of act the same way, right? They don't. There's not.
We need
not a
Starry.
huge amount of.
Has Starry done anything yet?
No,
They're still
no,
like
and
piloting.
it never will because
Oh, come on. It's such a
the
great idea.
practical issues with Starry are so vast in
Mhm.
terms of getting spectrum that it's just. I mean, I hope they do. I hope they are hugely successful.
So, in case you don't know what Starry is, because we wrote about it last year and then haven't really since then, is it would be a third option of extremely fast internet service. You would have to like put some sort of like weird satellite object out your window to be able to get it, and it's something that's still being piloted. It's by the what did the guy do before then? What was that thing? He was
crap, the
stealing
TV service.
He was stealing
No, it's,
like TV stuff.
Crap. How do we not? We sent Joan
We
Sullivan
wrote
to the
about
Supreme
it.
Court.
We wrote
to
about
talk
it like a
this.
million times.
What's that? Crap. Do you remember what that TV service was?
I'm
that
gonna look it up now.
The Supreme
but
Court ruled was stealing from.
I'm obviously
Look it up,
embarrassed that I
please.
don't know.
But no. I will just say, in terms of like alternative wireless services, there was Light Squared, there was Clearwire. Oh yeah, Aereo.
It was Aereo.
Aereo, yeah,
it was
duh.
Aereo.
We need Joan. That's why
It's
we
a
need
weird
Joan on this.
name.
Yeah.
It's a weird name, I'll admit.
But we had Light Squared, we had Clearwire, we had a number of ventures that wanted to be like that third alternative internet source, and it just didn't work out.
Right. Light Squared, I think, was like an unmitigated disaster,
Oh, yeah.
if I remember
Oh, yeah.
correctly.
All right, let's delve into the chat for a little bit.
Yeah.
Brian and Barry in the chat says, if the ISPs get to sell my data at will, then I want cheaper internet prices.
Oh, wouldn't that be
Well,
nice?
Yeah,
well, one,
right.
that's an entirely different issue.
Right,
It's not
but-
net neutrality.
No, it's not
Absolutely.
that different.
No,
it's
but it's
also stripping out regulation.
It is, but it's not part of this particular
That's
set
true.
of rules that they've already kind of stripped that out. The privacy stuff is kind of gone. now.
Long gone.
So
it hadn't yet gone into place, right?
yeah, they
Before
were
it
looking.
actually-
So they'd actually passed the rules and they kind of put it on pause to kind of look at it. And Ajit Pai and other Republicans
they were
said,
like,
"Nope,
no, we're not going to do it.
no more privacy."
Expanding on that, Matthew says, agreed, as bad as net neutrality is, privacy is worse, referring to the lack thereof, I assume.
It has definitely more immediate, I think, effect on you and your personal life. I think net neutrality is ultimately more important because it's sort of this fundamental principle governing the internet, and whether or not it'll actually kind of exist after Ajit and Pai and the Republicans are done with it. It still remains to be seen.
I think also you're not actually getting a new. It's not like the government all of a sudden took away a protection that you used to have.
Right.
You never actually had that ISP protection in the first place. They tried to give it to you under Obama, and then when Trump got elected, it just never went into place.
Right. Speaking of principles, Svet says net neutrality is not about the money, it's about having political control over the message on the internet.
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh,
that's hot stuff right there.
That is hot
fascinating-
stuff.
Yeah, hypothesis.
Yeah. Imagine Sagi says, if we can get screwed over by companies for more profit, it will happen. Companies are already providing faster internet due to competition like Google Fiber.
Man, I am loving these comments.
Mhm.
Boy, you should all become reporters because
You
you're
should all just
mentally
write hot takes.
you're mentally
all the
in the
time.
right place right now.
Until the FCC takes your site down.
Sure,
Right,
sure,
right.
but their skepticism is warranted, and
FCC won't take your site down. It'll just let it languish slowly until it dies by itself.
Right.
So.
Expanding on that, Imagine Sagi refers back to the comment from Svet. He says, theoretically, an admin could charge CNN more than Fox News if they could.
Ooh,
There's
yeah,
another
that would
thought.
be
Yeah,
that would
that's an interesting theory.
And
That'd
then
be a
it's just this is
dirty-
going to be a
dirty
whole
business.
nother sandbox for special interests.
Yeah, I mean, it could potentially open Pandora's box. I
Yeah,
think
but
that-
ultimately, if they can't make money off of it, like that's the bottom line for a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
It's not they're not pushing a political agenda necessarily. They're just pushing whatever gets most viewerships or makes the most money.
my immediate impression
So
was
bad reality shows and
Yeah, which is what we have,
And cats.
which is our reality basically.
well,
is our TV.
a lot of the ISPs are really getting like burdened by Netflix traffic. I feel like they're going to go after Netflix first.
Yeah.
Like if they do have to do like some sort of, if you want to call it a shakedown, you want to like just get them to pay more money, whatever. I feel like Netflix takes up so much space, like as far as those pipes are concerned,
Yeah.
that they might get them to.
well, then
cough
they
up
should
more money.
friggin' absorb that and appreciate it. It's simple supply and demand.
I mean, sure. I mean, that makes
the
a lot of
counter
sense.
argument to that is like, well, we're spending all this money investing in our infrastructure, but we don't get to reap the benefits of what Netflix gets, right? Because
Yeah.
Netflix, not that they're making money hand over fist exactly because they've got to pay for content costs, but they're basically riding on this internet for free and getting
Right.
and basically getting their profits, and the carriers and the internet service providers sort of want their cut too. So,
Right. They're basically saying, tell me if I'm right about this. Like, we're not the highways. We're not the railroad. Like we're creating this private network that now like the government is trying to make into a public service. Like that's essentially what net neutrality does.
yeah, that's
So like we're not
Yeah.
like if like the government builds the highways, not ISPs or private industry or whatever.
I think
So
the
you should
analogy is
treat it
more
that
like
way.
when we've built these highways, the highways need to be maintained and upgraded all the time. That costs money. We need that's why we need our cut.
Right.
When you're constantly traveling over this highway, we need the tolls to maintain the highway and make sure.
Oh, there
it's
you
faster.
go. Tolls.
Tolls.
Is always an
Yeah.
important aspect of any net neutrality
Yes.
metaphor.
You gotta have tolls.
Yeah.
Svet asks, how is this different than a hacker hijacking your account and threatening to delete it all if you don't pay their ransom?
Okay, that's probably
Well,
a little too far.
That's really different.
One of them is illegal.
That is like completely illegal and not something I would suggest to anybody.
I mean, some would say having their freedom of information taken away is a crime.
I mean, sure, but I think that's probably taking a pretty strong argument to
Yeah, 'cause
like
they're
the
not-
nth
It is a little
degree.
dramatic.
Because
Yeah.
they're not killing access. They're just theoretically allowing cable companies or phone companies to
Bottleneck it.
bottleneck it or give priority access to certain bits. But it's really about money. I don't know if it's political. I think it's definitely more money driven.
Net neutrality protects small business. A giant like Netflix can afford to pay the ISP
Yeah.
ransom, but a smaller company may not effectively bankrupt them.
I mean, I think that's a classic example is that Netflix can pay for those faster highways, faster access, but like the next video startup may not do it. Like may
Right.
not be able to have the pockets for that.
Or
So
in
what I'm taking
theory-
away from this is this could potentially be a stifling of innovation.
Yes, that's the biggest argument there for a lot of the consumer advocates. And a
That
lot
was
of-
Wheeler's argument too. He talked a lot about
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a confusing and somewhat frightening time. I think we've been a
And also
little spoiled.
and the arguments are
Mm.
also like both sides have like co-opted the argument, right? Because the other side, will argue like, well, no, if net neutrality actually stifles innovation because we are not innovating on our networks and we're not getting faster. We have to be faster to do more things, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's a really confusing issue because like both sides can make a pretty valid argument about innovation.
Jen and a few others are hoping that there can be a discussion sometime down the road about free internet access. I don't know how that would come into
That would
play
be awesome.
in this current climate.
I don't know how free would work.
So until then, what steps do we need to take? I was actually thinking that perhaps I don't know what you guys do after work, but if you want to get in on this this plan of mine, I was going to start a internet speakeasy.
Okay.
With VPN access so that you can hide from the
Everybody.
yeah.
Oh.
Hide from the everybody.
But you have to be careful which VPN service you use because they can look at everything you're doing.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
We could just be on the hook even worse.
That's right.
Well, can we do one of these like internet speakeasies just around one of those Link NYC hubs so we don't have to pay for anything? So,
which is like the definition of an open Wi-Fi network.
right. Oh yeah, I guess you wouldn't have the VPN aspect for sure. But as far as like free internet service, at least like Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn are
That's
already
true.
getting
You're right.
some version of it. There are a lot of cities.
But it's not like you could just sit there all day. Well, I guess you could.
some people have.
But it's not like your home internet service, right? You
No.
can't like have access to it. You've got to be parked right next to this, this big kiosk.
It's this big kiosk thing, but at the same time, there have been like stops and starts of like all these different municipalities trying to
Yeah.
get some sort of free Wi-Fi or free internet
Beauty
service.
Wi-Fi it's been a dream for a long time.
Yeah, and this is probably the furthest along that it's gotten so far.
Yeah.
I don't really know how successful or how impactful it's been in kind of changing consumer habits, but if it does well, then people might actually see more of these.
P. Cody points out that there is free internet access. It's called free Wi-Fi hotspots. You're right. However, that's like going to your high school's library and hoping to get
Yeah.
access to anything besides like the Yahoo front page.
Right, and it's also super spotty. Like if
Yeah.
you did it through
Yeah.
the municipality, then you would at least be able to tell people, like, wouldn't that be amazing? Like, welcome to New York City. Like, Wi-Fi is everywhere.
Yeah,
but
they
that's
throttle
going to
your
take a
speed
while.
and your bandwidth. You can't even watch a YouTube video on those kind of things. Like,
Mhm.
No. In
it
fact,
exists,
if you're watching
but
YouTube, you're
does
like
it really
screwing
need
it
to?
up for everybody else. Which,
Right.
Yeah. Then you're just the jerk.
Oh, it's going to be a weird few months. Anything else, guys? I'm having a hard time,
Poor
honestly,
Brian.
digesting all
know.
of this because I'm already in a miserable spot. I'm not happy with my ISP,
Uh,
and I'm only fearing how like this is going to progress.
Who's
Oh
your,
yeah,
who is your
I love
internet
my
service
ISP.
provider?
I'm afraid to say because I think they might have me killed.
Oh, please, come
Spectrum.
on, Spectrum.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
Can somebody name
I
the worst
use-
one out there?
I use Cablevision. I mean, like,
I don't have a choice. I literally
Yeah,
spent
you don't have
last
a
week.
choice because like you're basically stuck with a region-specific cable provider, right?
I
So-
spent last week calling around, searching around, trying to find other resources. The only other thing
What about Verizon?
not in my area.
right. See, I'm actually moving next week to an area where they have Verizon Fios and Comcast. But you're right that the pricing is fairly similar.
Yeah,
I'm probably going to go with Verizon because the speeds are a little bit better.
right.
But like it's still a duopoly, which
Yep.
does not
Yep.
force down prices as much as you would hope they would.
Doesn't.
Yeah, just miserable.
Poor
I
Brian.
hate the internet.
Wow.
I'll go get you a drink, man.
I'm sorry, dude.
Poor guy.
All right, let's end it on that sour note.
Sorry, guys.
Happy
problem.
Monday, everybody.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Hope you enjoy your internet while you got it.
All right, if you liked anything you saw or heard here, or maybe not, thanks for Brian. Check us out on CNET. Our podcast is also available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, FeedBurner, and Google Play Music. See y'all tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.